Hi, my name is Sierra. I have a business called Idaho Plant Doctor. I am a plant health consultant and a garden coach, which means I come out to people's homes and I help them either diagnose their plants and what's wrong, help them evaluate their space as a professional horticulturist, or I actually work hands-on with them in their garden doing pruning, planting, maintenance, just teaching people how to take care of plants. In this class, we're going to be talking about pruning and the fundamentals of pruning and breaking down the different types of cuts, hopefully overcoming the fear of pruning and knowing when to make those different types of cuts and what the basic principles of pruning are. I'm Sierra Laverty. I'm a plant health consultant and garden coach. My business is Idaho Plant Doctor. I started that a couple of years ago when I was working at the Idaho Botanical Garden. I'm also a graduate school student, so I am quarter-time to part-time in my business, and then mostly in graduate school studying entomology. I have, I guess a little bit more about my background. I have a bachelor's degree in horticulture from Oregon State. I grew up here in Boise, but working at my family's 4-acre vineyard outside of Homedale. And that was my introduction to plants. When I was about 13 or 14 years old, I got told, hey, you're going to go work for your grandparents now? And I went, okay, great, what does that mean? And it meant a lot of summers spent pruning, constantly pruning. Pruning is really fun and really enjoyable and very satisfying when you do it, but it doesn't always start out that way. When I was 13 or 14 years old, I was very scared to make a cut. I was given these pair of Falcos here, and I was, oh, maybe I'll cut there, cut here, maybe I'll do that. Eventually, I swung way over to the other side, and I got overconfident. And I started to hack away, and it would look like a tornado had gone through the vineyard. And I learned eventually that's not the way to do it either. So somewhere between being afraid to make a cut and shearing and hacking and cutting, which I would argue is not pruning, somewhere in between those two things where you're being thoughtful about the pruning that you're doing, but you're making the cut and you're pushing through that fear, is the art and the science of pruning. I'm really, really excited to share that with you guys. Why prune? What are our goals? The growth. Yeah, okay, so to spur on more growth? Yeah, maybe? There's a good question here. Does that really work? We're gonna talk about that. Okay, what else do we prune? Anybody else? Yeah?
To create a more pleasing shape.
Aesthetics. Absolutely. Pruning can be more of an art. Sometimes I call people that over-prune artists instead of pruners. That's okay. All right, so what else do we prune? Yes?
To remove dead, damaged, and diseased.
Heck yeah, dead, damaged, and diseased. The 3D is coming out. Dead, damaged, and diseased. We're doing these, why? Why do we want to do that? Why would we remove those things? The health of the plant, yes. This is all related to plant health. I'm the plant health consultant. This is a big deal to me. That's where I'm always going to be coming at it from. I'm not a landscape designer. I guess I'm a little bit artistic, but I'm definitely, this is my love, my excitement, where I get really into it. Okay, so looking for the health of the plant, why else are we pruning? Any other reason? Is that it? Maybe have fruit trees? No fruit trees in this class? Oh, a couple, okay, good, okay. Oh, nice, so there's like 5 of us that have fruit trees. Okay, good, all right. Fruits, we want more fruit, we want better fruits. Grapes, that's a huge deal. Balancing the whole thing, it's very much an art. We also want flowers. Did you know, you prune something like a Rose of Sharon, you get bigger and showier flowers. So same with roses, that sort of thing. You can get bigger, showier, prettier flowers, better fruit. Any other reasons? Has anybody ever been hit in the face with a branch while they're trying to walk somewhere? Yeah. Control. I like to control our plants. I'm not very good at it. We're going to talk about why control is and is not a function of pruning. But to some extent, yeah, we can control things from pulling things off walkway, limbing up trees, etc. One more that people often don't think about, but arborists think about a lot, safety. Prune for safety. That's actually probably one of the most important things. As a homeowner, I don't want to see anybody with like a ladder propped up inside of a tree trying to get to the top of your like mature oak tree. No. Nobody's doing that. We're going to hire a certified arborist, ISA certified arborist to prune our trees, or somebody that we know that's been doing it for a long time, who knows what they're doing. There are a lot of butchers out there. And not Gary Butcher, he's actually really great. Yeah, we're going to hire somebody that knows what they're doing. Okay, safety. Because badly pruned trees can be very, very unsafe. But we're going to focus on this class on small trees that you can get to from the ground, or with a short ladder, or shrubs, which is my favorite thing to prune. I love pruning shrubs. There's just so much you can do with shrub pruning that you don't even realize like what you're missing until you do it. All right. So that's why we prune roughly. Didn't miss anything. Sometimes getting a view back, that we wanted a view. It's not there anymore because the plant's too big. So we're going to talk about that. Why do we prune? And what will pruning not solve for us? Pruning will not fix the size of your plant, unfortunately. Plants have a predetermined genetic height. That's why you see the height on the label. It says 10 to 15 feet. What height is that plant going to grow to? 10 to 15 feet. If you try to come and, let's say, I'll just do it over here. If you try to come and top this plant, it's going to grow right back to the size that it wants to grow. You can continue to remove energy, and stress that plant over and over again. There's going to be consequences to that. You remove energy, it's not going to grow as fast. It's not going to grow as tall. You have controlled the height. You've done that at the expense of the health of the plant. Right plant, right place. Say it with me. Right plant, right place. It's such an important thing. We say it over and over again in horticulture, but yet most landscapes are overplanted. And that is usually the problem when people come and they say, hey, I need help pruning my plants. They've gone overgrown. They're not overgrown, they are grown. They are mature. So there are some things that we can do. There are some tools we can use. We can shape them. We can try to pull them back away from pathways. We can try to shorten the view. Just shorten the height to control the view. But we're buying ourselves time when we do that. We're not solving the problem. So solving the problem is getting the right plant for the right spot. I know that that's hard when you have an established landscape, but I want you to be thinking about your landscape as something that changes. Plants are not furniture. They shouldn't be treated like furniture. They have living, breathing, dynamic lives, and sometimes those lives just need to go. Sometimes they're not the right plant for that place or for your goals, for your landscape. So think about your space as this constantly evolving, beautiful ecosystem, right? It's getting a little bit woo here, but it really is. So think about your spaces more than just the living room. All right. Getting off my soapbox. How do we prune? This is going to be the meat of this class, is how do we prune? Questions like when do we prune? We will touch on it a little bit, but consult the Oracle, which is not Google. It's the American Horticulture Society Pruning and Training Manual. This thing is awesome. I have a bunch of copies. It is not in print anymore, this particular version. There's a newer version that's out. I think this one has less pretty drawings in it. And the drawings are really, really helpful when you're learning. So try to get the white cover if you can. You can find it. I want everybody in Boise to snap all these up so that we have that all around. So when to prune? Ask this book. It will usually point you in the right direction. When to prune is also not actually that important of a question. As much as we agonize over I have to prune at this particular week. It's actually not as important as how to prune and what to prune and why to prune. All those things are much more important than when to prune. Okay, so we established that. All right, how to prune. I have good news for you. There are 2 types of cuts. Everything in pruning just boils down to which type of cut am I making from these 2 types of cuts. It is that simple. Thinning and cutting. All right, 2 types of cuts here. I'm gonna try to fix this real quick, hold on. The trunk, you've got a branch coming out of the trunk. Thinning removes that branch at its place of origin, right there. That's a thinning cut. We're gonna talk about the specifics of this in a second, but just the concept is it removes it at its place of origin. A heading cut removes it in a different spot. A heading cut is like shearing the plant. A heading cut is not at the place of origin, it's somewhere out here in the middle of that branch. And there's very, very different goals here between thinning and heading cuts. The majority of the cuts that I use, probably 80%, are thinning cuts. Do thinning, that's great. You're often doing that to encourage light to go into places where you want more light. You're encouraging the airflow, which prevents pest diseases. You're often kind of shaping the plant that way or lining it up. That's all thinning cuts. Heading cuts are, I want you to go this way now, or this way, or this way. You're thinning to a bud that's sitting in here. It may be that there's a bud already there. There's another branch that's growing here. Sorry, a branch that's already there. That you're heading and cutting off right here, and you're like, okay, I want you to go this way now. It may be that there is no branch there right now, and there's just a little bud, but you know there's a bud there, and so you're like, okay, eventually I want you to go this way. I'm gonna cut you here. This removes something called apical dominance, which, is anybody familiar with that term? No, it's not one we use like every day. All right, so I'm trying to come and demonstrate over here. Actually, can I pull that plant down, you think?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
When I cut this plant here, that's a heading cut. If I cut the plant at the base, that's a thinning cut. If I cut the plant, this branch, and I cut it here, that's a thinning cut. If I cut it here, that's a
Heading.
yeah, all right, I got it. Okay. When I cut the branch here, I'm removing the growing tip. If I cut it here, I'm removing the growing tip. That's a heading cut. It has big implications. It's very dangerous in some ways. All right, so if I cut here, what's going to happen is every little bud along this branch is going to go, now it's my time to grow. We're going to go, 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 go. And you're going to get like the Hydra effect. You have all these little latent buds, which are dormant buds you don't see, latent buds, little tiny ones you can't even see right now. They're all going to grow. And they're going to produce all these wacky side branches. And that growth is going to be a little bit unstable. It's going to be weaker. Often has less fruit. It's not going to be great. It's not great growth. We don't want to encourage that unless we absolutely have to. So heading cuts are a when necessary cut. Thinning cuts, have to do those a lot. Heading cuts will just create a bunch of water shoots, water sprouts. Those things go up. You ever looked at a bush and you're like, oh, that thing looks ugly. This guy going up way wacky. This guy's going over here. You know, just looks like overgrown and just ridiculous. You see sometimes in parking lots where they've been like sheared off and then they're just like creating all this like wacky growth. It's because they were sheared off that they have created that wacky growth. That was our fault, not the plant's fault. You can't fix that by just shearing and shearing and shearing. You can only fix that through thinning and waiting. Thinning and waiting. Where to make a cut? This is a tree. Like let's say it's a maple. Where do we make this cut? Alright. So we have this little ridge here. It kind of looks like raised weird wood. You see this on older branches, older trees. You'll notice this area. It's a little ridge between the bark of the tree and the branch. It's kind of bark ridge, branch bark ridge. Really important to be able to see this, or just notice it. A lot of times when the tree is immature or when the shrub is immature or whatever, it's not going to form this, so you're not going to see it. But I want you to leave this class and be looking for that other places, because this is going to tell you more about the tree's anatomy. This is where these tissues are joining, right here, where they're connected. There's another area here where on older trees, it's kind of bulged right there. Bulges out. This is called the branch collar. This area is the most important part of the whole situation. This is a really, really, really important area. Because trees don't heal their wounds like we heal our wounds. They seal up over those wounds. They can only do that if they have the tissues that are supposed to be the sealing tissues, are supposed to be fighting off diseases. There's actually a bunch of internal stuff going on here that I'm not going to get into. If you really want to get into it, we can talk about it later. There's internal mechanisms that are fighting off and warding off disease from getting into the internal part of the tree here in a bunch of places. And then there's also an external spot where as the tree, let's say this branch falls off, the tree actually comes and seals up over this wound right here. If you've seen that, seen trees sealing up over wounds before? I look for it out there. If you cut this off, if you make what's called a flush cut, and you cut right there, you're removing the entire defense mechanism. You might as well just chop a tree, because you've just removed this entire defense mechanism, and that's going to allow rot to come straight in. You're not fast enough, it's going to go straight in and dismantle this entire defense mechanism. If you cut way out here and leave a stub, you're doing the same thing. You might think, oh, I'll just be more cautious. I'll just go right out here. No. This area is not the tree's defense mechanism area. It doesn't have that stuff to it. It doesn't have those tissues there. It can't defend this. So rot comes in, and it actually goes all the way, sometimes, all the way into the heartwood of the tree. On trees like maples that get a lot of diseases are very prone to this sort of thing, cherries, other things, Rose of Sharon's actually. This just goes straight in. Where do we want to make this cut? Any ideas?
As close to the collar as you can.
Yes, as close to this branch collar as you can get. That's where you want to make this cut. It's hard. It's not always easy to see where that is. It doesn't look like a diagram when you're out there on the tree. You don't always have this bulge to tell you where it is. Do your best. It's okay. Do your best. I can't tell you it's 3 inches out or 5 inches out or 2 inches out, because that changes with how big the tree is, with how big the branch is or the shrub. So I know it's frustrating because you want to do it right, but you just have to kind of trust yourself and just do it over and over again. I've made plenty of bad cuts. I've made so many bad cuts. I continue to make bad cuts because I don't quite have the saw in the right place, or I can't get the saw into the right place sometimes. It's kind of just narrow and I can't quite get there. Good enough. You have to do what you have to do when you're out there pruning. And it'll just take time. You'll slowly understand this is where I make the right place. As you look at, if you have a really good tree company working in your neighborhood, watch them. Watch where they make those cuts, because that's where you're going to be making cuts on something this size too. You're gonna be pruning the same kind of way. So that was the magic secret of pruning. This is it. Really. There's a lot more to it, but this is the foundation of pruning, is thinning and heading, when to thin, when to head, and where to make that cut. That's the how of pruning. All right, so I'm going to go over tools. This is my favorite tool, pair of Pelcos. I use the number 8. They're more ergonomic. It's really common in the wine industry, but I don't see them as much in horticulture, and I'm like, why? Because they're made for your hands better. So you might as well get a pair of 8s. They have different numbers. If you have really small hands, I think the number 6 is for tiny hands. There's left-handed pruners. Get the size that works for you, because it's gonna make a world of difference. Get the size that works for you, get the type that works for you, try them out. I know it's expensive. It's worth the investment, I guarantee it. worth the investment. These things will last you a long, long time if you take care of them. And how you take care of them is really specific. So, if you're doing a lot of pruning, some of my fruit tree people out there, get some Spelco spray. It's not that expensive. And when you feel like some resistance when you're pruning, you're just going to spritz once onto the mechanics there. And that's going to help keep dirt out of the system. The Spelco spray, you search for it there. You're also going to get a speedy sharp. That is this little sharpener here. You're going to keep this on you when you're doing a lot of pruning in one day or in between pruning jobs. And keep this on you. And I'm going to teach you how to use this right now. So Speedy Sharp is like it's like Kleenex. It's like it's a brand. It's become the word for it. So you're going to take the pruners, and you're not going to hold this off really because I have to hold the microphone. You're going to take this, and you're going to take it at an angle. And what you're trying to do is maintain this little beveled edge at the very edge of the pruners. If that beveled edge is gone, go get a new pair, or go replace the blade, one of the two. So, I'm going to drag this towards you 5 times, and then once on the other side to even it out. And that's how you use these guys. Next most common used tool that I use is a saw, not slippers. The small size is awesome. You should definitely have a small saw on you. I see people try to use this guy, the chainsaw replacement, on like tiny little branches. No, don't do that. It's awkward. You're gonna make a really weird rough cut. You don't wanna make a rough cut. That's gonna create more problems. More chances for pests and diseases to come in, the rougher the cut. This small little saw is awesome. It's called a pull saw. It's not a pole saw, but a pull saw. You're pulling it towards you. Yeah, so ARS and Silky, both Silky, S-I-L-K-Y, both make pull saws, which means you're pulling it towards you, and that's where the action is. You're not pushing it, and ruin the saw if you push hard. I see a lot of people try to be macho with it. Like, no. Work with the saw, breathe, center yourself, all that stuff. That's gonna really, really help you out. Actually, always start with feet flat on the ground as much as you can, breathing through the emotion wherever you're doing. I like this saw in particular because it is curved when I need to go up or I need to go down. That's more ergonomic. And so awesome. It goes straight. When I need to go straight out. I got a pull. It's really cool. If you don't get one that does that, get 2 different types of saws. I swear. Please get a straight forward and get an up and a down saw, a curved saw, because it's going to save you a lot of backache later on. I don't want anybody having back problems because they're out there trying to prune the plants. The next size up that I like a lot, so this is like a 5 1/4 inch, I think is what it's called, maybe 6-inch saw. 6-inch pruning saws are great. Corona also makes a lot of entry-level saws. They're also good. They're just not gonna probably last as long. They bend a little bit faster. ARS, awesome saws. Very, very good. They're also that full action saw. These guys are just they're gonna last you a long time. This is a straight blade. This is like an 8-inch. When these get dull, don't try to sharpen it or take it to get sharpened. There's no point. It's gonna be much more expensive than just trying to get a new saw. So either get a replacement blade or get a new saw. And then or my favorite thing, when you get a replacement saw, you turn this saw into a root saw. So this saw then becomes something that you do when you're trying to trim roots off, which we're not gonna get into this class. It's a whole other thing. Root pruning is awesome. It's fun. Super interesting, and you can learn about it if you want to do a coaching appointment with me. All right, so always keep those in their little sheaths. If they come with this, keep it with it. Keep it out of dirt. It's going to last a lot longer. Next size up. There's sizes in between, but this is the major guy, the 13-inch arborist saw. This is, again, chainsaw replacement. A lot of times I don't want to use a chainsaw because it's just kind of annoying and it just starts every time. Still, it's really good professional equipment, and they make really good chainsaws. All right. You'll see that I'm not putting a lot of emphasis on blockers. That's what these guys are right here. They're not shears. Shears look like scissors. This is a walker. This is a bypass walker, in fact, which means that these two parts cross over one another. Loppers you can sharpen the same way that you sharpen your pruners. Kind of awkward, but you can do it. I recommend it. Loppers can create very rough cuts. So if you're pruning something like a Japanese maple that has very brittle wood, do not put this anywhere near it. don't use loppers on a Japanese maple unless you're cutting up the diseased, like dead parts that you're just gonna chop up and put in the compost or something. Or maybe don't put it in the compost, I guess. That's a whole other topic. Okay, so loppers. I really like the wood handles. They're warmer in the wintertime than the metal handles. It's really nice. And I guess they're cooler in the summertime too. Same difference. Use these on brush and that kind of thing. Don't use them on fine products or fine plants that you're like really trying to be specific and not introduce rot and those kind of things. You can chop off suckers at the base. You can prune things really far away from you. Use these a lot with fruit trees. And with fruit trees too, they're like if you're pruning peaches, you're taking off those little red shoots that come up on peaches. They're pretty pliable, right? So that cut isn't going to be quite as rough because there's a lot of moisture in that branch. Versus pruning a Japanese maple, they just break as soon as you look at them. If you prune a Japanese maple, you know it's not terrible. Questions? Yes? Yeah, you're doing shrubs, same concept. You don't want to cut like flush when you're pruning shrubs either. Same concept. It matters more the woodier the plant material is. So the greener that plant material is, this kind of stuff, like this like green stuff here, like you can kind of shear that, do a bunch of stuff with it. It's a different type of material. It doesn't have that branch collar to it. So if you're doing like boxwoods or you're doing something else that's not any of those like, where it's got like really like bendy parts. That's why like pruning a barberry, I don't like to do this, but like you can shear down a barberry. I don't like to do it because I think they're much more beautiful when they're just like open fountain, like doing their own thing. Lavender, great example. You can prune into that like non-woody tissue. You don't want to be pruning into like the really woody tissue on a lavender because they're not going to bounce back from that. But you're pruning roses, you're pruning even like vines, like clematis sometimes, wisteria, Rose of Sharon, smoke trees, all of those guys. We want to be pruning not flush. We don't want to be making flush cuts still. We want to be providing a little bit of space. And that amount of space is dependent on like how big that branch is. So matters less and less the smaller it is. But the bigger it is, the more important that, because it's bigger wound. More space for things to go wrong. Okay, does that make sense? Awesome. Yeah.
If you get the new growth shooting out of that stump, is that a sign you did that improperly?
That's a great question. No, it's actually not. So it's a sign that there was a latent bud here that probably was gonna push anyways.
Okay.
And it did, and it grew. So there could be more than one bud at a single node, if that makes sense. So right here, this is a node right there. There could be more than one bud right there that can like shoot out. And oftentimes when you've done a heading cut up here, you'll see like multiple buds at the single node just like hydra out. Yeah, that's a good question. Any other things? Yeah.
You mentioned suckers.
Uh-huh.
Is there like a magical pet you can use to reduce them?
Ooh, that's such a great question. We did get that question earlier. Okay. There's a couple things with suckers. Let me just write that down for you real quick. So the plant's producing suckers for a specific reason. It's sometimes with like a crab apple or with a contorted filbert, it's because they're actually grafted onto rootstock. So rootstock is like the root underneath. So they've taken two different types of plants and they're spliced them together. That rootstock often wants to just grow and grow and grow and grow, and it wants to do its own thing. This happens a lot with fruit trees. It's not always a sign of stress. However, if you don't have, let's say you have a lilac that has a bunch of suckers. When I see lilacs with a ton of suckers at the base, something is wrong up here. It's probably stressed. It may be that there's beetles, there are a lot of borers that affect lilac, there's diseases that affect lilac. They're susceptible to like 1,000 things. They're pretty tough. They do grow back. They will try to produce new suckers, and lilacs will last a long, long time. There are products you can use to try to reduce suckers. I don't recommend using them because you can do more damage if you're not very, very careful. If you're not a professional, probably don't want to be using a lot of like sucker be gone type products because you can actually damage your parent plant. If you don't care about it, then well, throw it on, I guess. But if you're trying to be really careful, then I wouldn't do that. Do not remove all the suckers all at once. I learned this helping the crews at the Botanical Garden, that if you come through every 3 weeks and prune off all the choke cherry suckers, that's what you're doing in 3 weeks. Pruning off choke cherry suckers. They're going to be just as tall as they were 3 weeks ago. Some of that has to do with water. So if you're overwatering, you can get a lot of sucker growth because it's like, oh, hey, all my energy, I'm going to go. Sometimes it's underwatering. What? Sometimes that's the plant's last ditch response to just try to put some growth out and try to get some, flowers or something like that, so that it's a sign of stress. A lot of times it's not. A lot of times it's food stuff. If you come through and prune all those all off, they're just going to come back. So prune 1/3 and then wait. Prune 1/3 and then wait. And wait longer than 3 weeks. Wait a month at least, and then come back and prune another third. And that will help with suckers. Same rules apply to water sprouts. So if you're seeing a lot of like really tall, leggy, crazy growth coming out of your plant, first of all, what did we probably do? Why are there a bunch of water sprouts? Do you remember with the two different types of cuts? We probably made some heading cuts, and that forced a bunch of really weird, awkward growth coming out from the plant. We probably came through and sheared something, or a branch broke. Something happened, and we removed that equal dominance, and then everything came growing back as like hydras. If you come through and you remove all those water sprouts, they're going to grow right back, and they're going to grow right back faster. And there's going to be more of them. So you can get stuck in this pattern of over-maintenance. It is really good if you're in the landscape industry and you want to just come and just like shear things down, and then they'll grow right back and look weird, and your client calls, and you're like, hey, my shrubs seem to be pruning again. It's only been a month. It's actually a maintenance thing. It's you're causing your own problems there. And while you're doing that, you're also encouraging disease. Remember all the shearing cuts, all that heading cuts? They call it non-selective heading when you're just shearing and not pruning to a bud. Okay, one big thing that we didn't actually talk about here. Always prune to a bud. I want everybody to say that with me. Always prune to a bud. Always prune to a bud. That's one of the tenets of pruning, always prune to a bud. Because otherwise, you're creating this like hacked off scenario where you're introducing disease and pests and other problems. Always prune to a bud. That's called selective pruning. And that's the pruning that we should all be doing. Not non-selective pruning. If you're pruning a boxwood, no big deal. Really fleshy green stuff, no big deal. If you're pruning a lilac, always prune to a bud. Does that make sense? Awesome, okay. Demonstrate those two different types of cuts really quickly on this hydrangea wood that I cut. So first I'm going to use this guy right here. Alright, so if I were to cut this off at the base of the plant, this would be what kind of a cut? Thinning. Thinning cut, because we're thinning it off at its place of origin. If I were to cut it in the middle, what would that be? Heading cut, right? And I'm always pruning to a little bud. So there's little tiny buds here, here, here. Even if you can't see it, you see this little tiny like protrusion right there? There's a little bud right there. So if I were to prune here, that is a non-selective heading cut. And then the plant's gonna go like that. It's gonna produce growth right there. Or sorry, a selective heading cut. Selective heading cut. That's where you want to be pruning. You prune in between, you leave a big stub, that's That's non-selective heading. We don't want to be doing that. All right. So if I were to prune this branch off, right there, the side branch, what's that? Thinning, yes, because we're pruning this branch at its place of origin. What about pruning this side branch off? What's that? Thinning. Awesome. What if I cut this side branch right here to these buds? What's that? Selective heading cut, yeah! Awesome. What if I just prune like randomly right here? Non-selective heading cut. Excellent, you guys are experts. Okay. This is the thinning cut here. Where I make a cut is dependent upon what I'm trying to accomplish. You always have to be thinking through these things, like, just because it looks right, is it really right for the growth of the plant? What's gonna happen when I make this cut? It's hard to envision what's gonna happen until you really think through the rules. So if I prune this right there to this little tiny set of buds right there, what's gonna happen to this branch?
It's going to start blossoming from the blooms.
It's gonna go, these little two buds right here are gonna go out, right? They're gonna grow. If I prune right here, this is a selective heading cut. This is gonna go this way. We do this a lot with hydrangeas, actually. This is the majority of what we're doing with hydrangeas is heading cuts. It's kind of crazy, but we do. Because then they produce blooms right there, and then they're gonna produce blooms exactly at those places. So we're trying to control height with hydrangeas. We're also trying to encourage new growth, to encourage new flowers. That's not the case with like every plant. Every plant does not respond to pruning the same way. So we're trying to learn how plants respond. Yes?
So when pruning like that, if you have mature plants and they haven't been pruned properly forever, right?
Nice.
And so you have this big bare spot and then growth.
Yeah, yep.
But you want it back down to a normal size.
Yep.
Where do you cut?
Where do you cut? Okay, that was a great question. I'm gonna repeat that. So, if you have a mature plant and it hasn't been pruned properly, and there's a bunch of bare space, in fruit tree pruning, we call that blank wood. That blank wood is not producing fruit, it's not producing flowers, same concept. You're actually gonna prune low. So you're gonna try to create a low framework again. You're gonna try to bring that back down really low. You're not gonna thin out that branch necessarily unless it needs to be thinned, and we're going to talk about what needs to be thinned and what doesn't when we look at plants. But you're going to prune and you're going to head low so that you then create that low, stronger framework that's not so spaced out.
Dead spot, that's fine. As we find a little bump somewhere.
Finding the bump, exactly, that's it. Yep, it's all about just finding those little buds. Yeah, and looking for them. And sometimes they're hard to see. They're not always as obvious. It depends on the time of year. So. That's one of the reasons that we prune hydrangeas in the springtime, or some hydrangeas in the springtime. Limelight hydrangeas, panifold hydrangeas, we do in the spring because things are a lot more obvious. And we can prune ahead of when they're flowering in the summer. Okay. Let's see, a couple more things, a couple more pop quizzes. What if I prune right there? What's that? Thinning. Yeah, you got it. Thinning cut. What if I prune right here? Oh, selective heading. All right. I kind of pruned in the middle of that bud, so it's all right. This right here. Ooh, tricky, right? Okay. Where's my wood? This is where you get to play the fun game of how old is the wood. This right up here, this really like soft, pliable stuff up here. Last year's growth. 1 year. Then, so that's 1 year. So I'm going to prune off. That's 1 year. Now I'm left with this. This is probably 2 year. That's thinning off 2 year. What's this? The next step. So what we did just prune one off, 1 year off, I prune 2 years off. Now what's this? 3 years. Yep. So this is 3 year right here. Probably to right there. And then this is 4 years. Learning that and getting a sense of where that growth is, how much growth. I mean, this is like next level. And some of you guys felt really comfortable with pruning, so I'm gonna address this. How much growth a plant puts on is directly related to how happy it is, how much water it's getting, how much nutrients it's getting, and its genetics. So it could be that it's a really slow grower. Ginkgo's really slow grower. Hackberry, tiny growth each year, unless you're putting on a ton of water. Something like a hydrangea is a medium grower. So like this amount of growth in 1 year, I would totally expect that. That's totally fine. If it has a bunch of like really leggy growth like you're talking about, something's gone wrong. The plant's not pruned properly. It's trying to like reach up towards the light. Maybe it's too shaded. Potentially it's being shaded out by other plants, or it's shading itself out, and those shoots are trying to like reach up towards light. This is a little bit more of an advanced concept, but you can follow me, right? Okay. Any questions about this? Difference between heading and thinning? Okay. All right, so I'm just gonna talk about this Sumac here. This is probably a tiger eye Sumac, or Rus is the genus. Don't be afraid of Latin names if you're a gardener. They're really, really useful. So, a couple of things here. Can anybody tell me now what you've learned, like where there might be something going wrong here? What's
The stump at the bottom behind you.
Ah, the stub! There's a stub! Oh no! There's a couple of stubs actually. There's a big old stub down here that's definitely dead. And then there's a stub right here which is probably dead. And what probably happened a long time ago was the stub got left. You know, maybe it was protruding out into the pathway or whatever, and somebody was trying to control the size. And they cut and they left this long stub, and then rot started to come into the plant. And then we got introduction of rot combined with, I'm sure, sunburn right here. So maybe there was some shade that this like limb was doing. This got burned, that tissue got damaged, and so now we've got like a slightly compromised plant. And when you come back around on this side, because we're gonna go that way in a minute, look at this plant and look at how it's sealing up over that tissue damage. Because again, plants and trees don't heal, they seal, right? So this is it trying to like seal up over. It's never gonna be able to seal up over this stub. So we're gonna have to come in and remove this stub in order to let it seal up over that wound. Now, if you look again, oh man, a lot of you are on that side. Some of you might want to come on this side actually. It's probably gonna be easier for you to see what I'm doing. So there's a little bit of like a raised edge right here, right in there. A little bit of a raised spot. That's the branch collar. You can actually see it right in there. It's a really funky looking branch collar, so this is why I'm saying like, you can't always say like, oh, it's 2 inches out, or oh, cut exactly here, because every branch is different. They're all connected differently and like in weird, odd ways. So where I'm gonna cut is like just outside of that, so that just in case there's a little bit more of a branch collar like out here, I suspect that that's exactly like where that tissue is being sealed off, is like right in there. So I'm gonna leave a little bit. It's gonna take a minute because it's a dead tissue. It's always a little bit harder to cut into than live tissue. I'm gonna try to find a good like spot to do this.
Would you ever use like a power like chainsaw, or like a small chainsaw for something that size?
I probably wouldn't bother.
Okay.
There are power assisted like loppers and pruners and things like that. And those are really useful if you're doing like rows and rows and rows of a bunch of stuff. I guess I've never worried about it for something this size.
You're just younger than I am.
Yeah, right. There's always that. So I'm gonna use my straight saw because I'm right, like at the right angle here. I wanted a longer saw just because I don't want to sit here for ages and make you guys all like wait while I do this. And I gave a little bit of clearance. Whoopsies. Okay, so yeah, you see how that was pretty much all dead. So there were 2 branches, actually. There was a branch overlapping another branch, which was really interesting. And they probably killed each other in some ways, trying to like push up against one another there. Anyways, I left a little bit of a stub you can see right here, because if you look at like kind of the line at the very end here, like
this is where that branch collar sits, so I could probably come and do a little bit closer. If I wanted to like recut this, I could do like a little bit closer, but this is about as much as I want to do. And this is much easier to seal over than what was there before. However, I'm not really correcting the problem of the rot entering in because it's already there. But I can help the issue of the plant being able to seal up over that. So yeah, I could take, you know, a millimeter or two more, but that was easy. So. When you zoom in, and I know you can't see this exactly, there is a little bit of a branch bark ridge right up in here. I often will get out my hori-hori and go, aha, I found it, the branch bark ridge. I'm not going to prune into that. That's way further out than the branch collar, right? The branch collar is going to be like right here. And you can actually see that when you come and look closer, like look at this and then keep going, because you can see a little bit of a swelling right here, and then this gets smaller. If we were to prune this branch, which we're not going to because it's in good shape, we would prune like right there. So if I were to prune off this stub here, because why do we want to prune stubs off?
Disease.
Yeah, so that the plant can deal with the disease, right? So we can seal up over that wound. What I'm gonna do is kind of look, okay, the tree is actually trying to seal up over this, and I can tell that there's a problem because it's not sealing up over the whole thing. So I'm gonna come and I'm gonna go like right here. And that was pretty dead wood, right? So I probably could have taken more because that dead wood is not where the branch collar is. The branch collar is living tissue that the tree keeps or the shrub keeps intact so that it can use its defense mechanism. The branch collar is actually like all of this right in here for this particular branch. So we're not gonna, you know, do a bunch of flush cut and try to like scrape this clean. We're just gonna get rid of that dead wood so that it can now seal up over that, and there isn't like a perennial wound in here forever and ever. This tree was lion-tailed. This tree, this shrub, whatever, this plant, this woody plant was lion-tailed. All the concepts are the same. Lion-tailed is where we have a bunch of growth out at the end, like a lion's tail, and then this is all bare. The problem is that puts all the weight out at the end of the branch and makes it much more likely that this branch is gonna fail. If not like a guarantee that at some point this branch is gonna fail if all the weight is at the end. It just sort of depends on how soon, how weak the wood is, how healthy the plant is when this is gonna fail. What happens when you have lion-tailed something? I've lion-tailed stuff and gone, oh shoot, I thinned out all of this stuff, all this internal wood. There used to be a branch here, there used to be one there, used to be one there, one here. Dang it, I pruned too much, What do I do? Well, you're actually gonna use the other tool that you have, which is heading. And you're gonna head back. So you're gonna come and you're gonna head back here, or you're gonna head back here, and you're gonna hopefully produce some shoots on that blind wood because you're pushing back those hormones, that apical dominance. All of those hormones are coming back in here and going, oh, now it's my time to grow. So I'm gonna get rid of that stub. They're gonna grow from all the little latent tiny buds that are in here that we can't even see. They're gonna grow, and that's the hope. Okay. Does that all make sense? Why we don't lion tail? Why we don't overthin? And why? And what to do about it?
Who trimmed this last?
I don't know. Okay, I will say this is literally the only example of bad pruning that I could find in this entire garden, because it was hard. Like I came and scouted, and Annie, whoever like manages this, it's such a good job. So like there's no offense taken here. Every other plant is like just, I don't know. Mwah. What I like to do with barberries is encourage the natural architecture of the shrub. If you look at this rose behind me, it has this kind of like open vase shape that's really truly beautiful. And if we can embrace kind of the natural genetics of the plant, you're not gonna be fighting it as much, and it's gonna look prettier. So this has been pruned really well to keep this like nice open shape. This guy, I would thin out probably 30%. There's actually 3 shrubs here, so it's a little bit unfair. But I would prune out like 30% of the total canopy here, the total branches, because there's enough what's called vigor there. There's enough energy, there's enough growth. It's really like, it's trying to like produce a lot of growth. If this were weaker, let's say like maybe it looks a little bit more like that, where there's not quite as much growth, maybe it's a younger plant, maybe there's a disease issue, that Barberry over there, I might just prune 15%. I might prune 20%, but I wouldn't prune the entire 30% or even 50%. When you start to get over 30%, you're doing renewal pruning, which is where, that's fun, where you're starting to like rejuvenate the entire shrub or tree or whatever. So where you prune, when you're pruning at the base, is different than where you're pruning like up here. If you prune, see these roses have been pruned down here, the plant is able to compartmentalize and deal with that wound, kind of regardless of where you're pruning down here. The more that you leave, the more likely it is to sprout from that cut. So you're leaving a bunch of buds, but if you prune down really low, it's probably just gonna die back from that spot, and that's okay. So you're not trying to like use, the branch color doesn't apply down here. It applies up here, if that makes sense. Where I would make these cuts, like let's say I wanted to prune this rose, I would try to take out probably this older branch here. Those of you that can see that there's 2 branches that are kind of crossing right here. I don't, when you start to like look at a branch and you're like, oh, I'm looking at this shrub and oh, there's crossing and rubbing out here. Don't start up here. This is just gonna confuse you. It's gonna be wacky. You're not gonna be making the right cuts. You're gonna be making weird random cuts out here. This kind of crossing and rubbing is not a big deal. The plant can deal with that. The crossing and rubbing that you see when you see like remove crossing and rubbing listed in all the art, all the literature and stuff, is down here. It's the stuff that's big, that's woody, that's rubbing and causing a spot where there can be like pests and diseases can come in. Disease really. Usually fungal diseases will come right in. Or bacterial. So right here I have an option. I can take this one, I can take this one. That's always the choice you're kind of rolling through, like, okay, I don't really like the architecture of this branch because it's like wacky, somebody whacked it here, somebody whacked it here, that's really weird. I like more, you know, flowing architecture from an aesthetics point of view. It's also like, kind of weakens the branch every time it gets like lopped weird. So I'm not a big fan of this branch, but my other option is this really old branch here. Removing the older branches on a rose bush, especially, or something like a Rose of Sharon or dogwood, other things, the older branches are less flowering. They'll produce smaller flowers if they flower at all. A lot of times they're just doing vegetative growth. And sometimes they're just dead. This entire branch might, most of it might be dead. Looks like most of it's dead. All right, so my decision would be to take this out over here. And I would get my little saw, my tiny one, little pocket boy, and I would saw this out right there. Sometimes it's 6 1/2 dozen, and it's okay. Just make the decision and do it. It's better to cut and get rid of the problem than to like be so scared you're not cutting at all. Over here, the question was, how do we control the height? We're not gonna come and do non-selective heading, right? We talked about that, we don't wanna really do that. Even though barberries, they can take it, but they're still gonna grow all these water sprouts. It's gonna be all crazy. What we're gonna do instead is kind of look at where the problem children are. So this might be my problem child out here. This one might be it. Maybe these guys out here, maybe some on the back. You're gonna take out 30% of the branches total, but you're gonna choose which ones to take out. You're not just gonna do that randomly. You're gonna choose and be strategic about this one's in my way, this one's in my way. And you're not just gonna go here and go 30%. You're following this all the way back down to where it meets either with a parent branch or all the way down inside the shrub. And you're gonna take that all out. So you're thinning. You're not heading, you're thinning when you're trying to control size here. Heading is gonna make it bushier. That actually might create more of a problem, because then you're gonna get all the water spouts. You're not heading, you're gonna come in, you're gonna thin this branch or thin out the parent branch. Does that all make sense? Cool. For espaliered fruit trees, they get harder the older they are. These are harder than like a young fruit tree because there isn't as much energy in the system of a young fruit tree. Fruit trees, all about the root system. So if you have older, more established roots that have gone out for a really long ways, they're gonna have more resources, they're gonna have more nutrients, more water, all of that good stuff is gonna be pulled up into the tree, and the tree's gonna have a lot more energy. Espalier naturally fights the tree's impulses to grow a bunch because you're trying to keep it in a really specific space. The tree doesn't want that. Your goals are like conflicting with the tree, right? And that's okay because, you know, you're working as a gardener, you're trying to do something specific here, and we're just gonna have to like, nope, train it like a dog. I know you wanna go outside and pee, but we're not doing that right now, right? We're working on this goal. So, with espaliered fruit trees, you need to know the difference between fruiting wood and vegetative wood. So fruiting wood has got fruit on it, vegetative wood has mostly got leaves on it. On pears and apples, that is the upright, big old tall shoots are the ones that have the, are vegetative. So most of those are all gonna have leaves on them, very few fruits. Apple and pear fruit on spurs. So this right in here, this is gonna be our fruit right there. That's a beautiful example of an old spur. Spurs can last for like 10 years, 8 to 10 years. If you treat a spur right, that spur will just keep producing every year, and it's gonna, you know, have all that fruit for you.
So these are spurs here?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
these are spurs. That's a beautiful spur right there.
Okay.
Here's a spur, there's a spur.
Okay.
Eventually, you'll notice like this wood was once this. They eventually will grow spurs.
Okay.
It is possible for them in a single season to like produce a tiny spur here. It's probably not gonna be great fruit. The best fruit comes from these like mature spurs, but they can produce a little bit. So with fruit tree pruning, it's all about balance. You're balancing the needs, or the needs of the tree. So you're balancing, we want leaves, right? If we don't have any leaves, we've got a very unhealthy plant. So we have less photosynthesis going on. That's actually gonna be less sugar for you down the road. Like you wanna have this balance between fruiting wood and non-fruiting wood. I would say the balance is tipped towards non-fruiting wood right here. We only have a handful of spurs. We've got a lot of vegetative growth. That's not surprising at all because this is an older espaliered system. What we're gonna try to do is come in and thin, right, the non-fruiting wood. So we're gonna take out maybe 20%, or I like to say like the top, the highest, I like the tallest, 20 branches or something like that. I'll set myself a limit and I'll count as I go, and I'm like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, this is my limit, because if I take too much, I'm reducing the plant's capacity to produce sugars and everything else it needs. So you really don't want to over-thin your fruit trees. If you want to create more spurs, you can also do some heading cuts. So on fruit trees, you're actually going to be doing a lot more heading cuts than you would on just anything else. Like you have more of a balance between heading and thinning cuts. So you're going to come and you will, let's say, like we wanted to create a new spur here to like produce spurs next season. I'd probably come and just leave a couple of buds, and then that's where my spurs would be next season. There is and I would cut right there. There is a chance that you're just gonna have vegetative growth again, but you're trying to encourage this to come out, go horizontal, and produce fruit instead of going vertical.
So then would you cut these off?
Yeah, so I would thin, like at the base here, that's a thinning cut. A if I wanted this to become a new fruiting spur, I would, so there's one bud, so there's a bud down here, actually all the way to the base. There's a bud there, there's a bud here, and there's a bud way up here. I'm kind of annoyed by that because I actually want a bud like right there, not up here. So I'm gonna be conservative, more on the conservative side, and I'm gonna go up here. And that will help me produce, hopefully, what's gonna happen is I've just removed the growing tip here, sent the energy down, and this will turn into a spur this year.
Is there a rule of thumb for how many new spurs you should be trying to encourage?
Oh, sure. You just want a balance between. I would say, like, I actually try to like look at 50-50 with my fruit trees.
I see. Okay.
And then, if you're doing 50-50, you have to come in and thin the fruit afterwards too, because there's still going to be, too much fruit for the system, especially on pears and stuff where like you want like a bigger fruit or an apple or something like that. Like you want to come through and thin, especially if it's like really vigorous, anyways. And a lot of that also does depend on the size of the plant. So we're talking about mature stuff. For like younger fruit trees, the goals are completely different. The first 3 years, you're not focusing on fruits, you're focusing on root. So for the first even 5 years of the fruit tree, all you're doing is trying to send energy down to the root. And you do that by encouraging vegetative growth.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yep. So you're not trying to encourage fruit at all, because that's taking resources away from the plant.
You remove the fruit that develops in the first few years?
Yes, you do. You thin out a ton of fruit. Yeah, and especially like the first 3 years. Actually, we'll talk about this. You'll thin out like almost all of the fruit. Like you want a little bit so you can like try it and see what's going on. But you're gonna remove the majority of it the first 3 years. Okay, so that's like the little mini Espalier lesson. Yeah, of course.